Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Grapes of Wrath podcast discussion book thing type thing where we invite farmers and they discuss the book that they read about the Grapes of Wrath. Wow. Oh my God, thank you, host. I'm so happy to be here. Hi, Joanne. How are the kids doing? I'm so happy to be on TV. Oh, Alfred, get away from the camera. You're
Oh,
way too close.
is this a camera?
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, Alfred, contestant Alfred, please do not touch the cameras. Those cost more than your barn
Oh,
back into your background.
I'm very sorry, very sorry.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna be careful. Hands off. What do you want us to do? Podcast host, how should we start? I want you guys to talk about the book a bit. So maybe introduce what the book is and a bit of the context. That sounds good.
Okay, yeah, I think I can. I think I can take charge on this.
Sure.
Um, so we're gonna talk about a book called The Grapes of Wrath. I'm gonna focus a little bit more on chapter 17 because it's not really that necessary to talk about like the entirety of the book. It will be too long. But yeah, the story itself follows a family called the Yod family who are migrants. They are actually migrating west after a very recent destructive drought that had killed the entirety of their crops and their cattle. And well, basically, all of that progress has been rendered useless, so they have to find a new home. And throughout the entire story, we find out about their now recent and very different routines that they have, and all of the struggles that they go through this migration process. And yeah, that's a very lengthy topic, but we can narrow it down a bit in here.
Yeah. That's the whole book, right? So chapter 17 focuses a bit more on the aspects of camps and people migrating because what was happening? At that time that we just lived in, this was like 10 years ago, an event called the Dust Bowl plagued the US. So in the Great Plains region, in the 1930s, a severe drought hit and lasted for a really long time. We didn't have a lot of water. And a lot of farmers, not me, I didn't do this for sure. They did extensive farming, which completely killed the native grasses. So the soil was dry and had no roots in it. So it was basically very flimsy. Then, on top of all of that, we were hit by dust storms, which carried just all of the soil. The floor just flied off, which you can assume isn't very good for farming. That the soil is important for farming, and so we lost all of the fertile soil. And these dust clouds, wherever they hit, it was just complete catastrophe because it eroded farmland, eroded the crops, and caused health problems. So not very good. So Roosevelt, president, he basically wrote this letter for the people called On Drought Conditions, where he tried to motivate us. He provided jobs for people who were affected by the drought and urges farmers and some politicians to start water and soil conservation strategies because if we didn't save the area, all the US states would be affected because it's where we farm and do stuff, right? So, but what ended up happening was that a lot of the people losing their capability to farm actually traveled west to find new job opportunities. So that's basically what happened. Let me show you. So here you can see this dust storm actually. So this is pretty bad. This is gonna destroy all the crops. My friend used to live here. Not very good for him. Not very good for his farm, I was told. Here. Oh my God. This dust storm is very threatening. This is where I lived actually. I lived here with my wife. Um, and we had to leave. The second I saw the storm, I was like, well, I gotta leave. And I hopped onto my car and I traveled west. How about you, Alfred?
Yeah, I had a neighbor that I remember him coming out of his house and he said like, "Dear God, calamity just struck. We are basically doomed." And yeah, he said something along those lines. And when I think about it, it's pretty funny. But at the time, it really wasn't. And seeing that colossal structure, or like, I guess you can call it structure, but fog coming was very, very threatening.
That's very scary. So I think that's the context done. Host, do you want us to talk a bit about the what actually happened in our chapter? Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Okay, so we're gonna talk about daily routines, ideologies that people had, and some other things. So during the day, people would drive to the west because that's what they wanted. They would drive the entire day, and at night they would stop wherever they found appropriate. We're gonna talk a bit about this later. But they would stop near water, flat land, and somewhere that had flammable materials so they could start fires. So it's basically they needed to set up camp to sleep during the night because they literally all they did was travel. If they were lucky, they would stop near garbage dumps so they could scavenge for cans and stovetops. So so here's an image. This is kind of how it looked like. So you can see the camps. This is actually a very good tent. It's very high quality. And this is a pea field that has irrigation. So it's very there's water here. People would stop for water and join together like this to be together. So this is around how it looked like. And yeah, I think you can see that it's people would stop their cars and build the tent. So continuing their daily routines, people would usually get there, set up camp, like I showed you guys. And then they would say hi to the people who were there before and start setting up camp. So the children would carry wood and get their water. I remember how my kid, what is his name again? I don't, so he died a few years ago, so I don't really remember him, and I also didn't really like him. Steve, yeah. So Steve would go with Kochuji, and they would go gather wood and water. So that's helpful. Then men, strong men like me, would set up the tents, and women would cook. I remember my lovely wife, Martha, she also died. She used to cook this great soup. It was really good. It's so sad that she died. It's really sad. She died actually on the trip. It wasn't good. But you live and you learn, you know?
Yeah, and something interesting to point out, a little detail, the people that would actually plan these things and the ones that would actually decide to settle camp and look at the setting to see if it's actually in like good conditions to set up camp were the men, of course, the leaders of the family. Uh, and they would normally find these spots right before dusk struck to make sure that they have at least a little bit of light to set up the camp before, they're in complete darkness.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Of course, people would settle camp where there will be usually better resources, like, of course, the most important one, water. And then, of course, other people would stop in large communities because they would think that the area was good. But eventually, after a long while, they would just start stopping for the sole reason of being in company with others.
So a lot of people joined, right? And you're like, oh my God, there's a lot of people here. Let's stop. It's just like humans seeing a bunch of other humans and being like, oh, I gotta be with them. Kind of pack mentality. Sorry about that. I got tired lung. That makes sense. So people would stop because it's a good spot, right? And then other people would just be like, "Hey, I want to stop here," and it makes a lot of sense because these people basically shared a background, shared they were very similar. They shared a common background in it that they lost their previous world and a common goal in it that they're trying to find a new permanent world. So it makes sense that they would join together like this and want to be with each other. I think in the story you can see that they became like worlds. They literally became communities. The camps would become communities like this and become very close to each other. And that's kind of weird. But then if you think about it, they're very similar people and they have very similar backgrounds. So they would see themselves in each other and feel closer because of that. So I think that makes sense. Than what you said, like bad things for someone would be bad things for the whole community because they felt so close, right? So a sick kid would make everyone sad, and a new baby, for example, would make just people super happy because like they'd be happy for the person who had the kid. It'd be like someone in their distant family or their neighbor having a kid. So you can see here, these are actually two families in one camp, and they're coming together. Like, do you see this? They look like friends, but they just met each other. And here's the baby. This baby would become kind of everyone's kid. Everyone would take care of the baby. Everyone would take care of the kid besides the baby. If someone here got sick, the girl in the car, if she got sick, everyone would take care of her because they would just feel so close together. They would really become this world. They would become this community, right? So that makes a lot of sense. And as all communities, they would have loss, right? So I think, Alfred, you can uh, pick this up. What do you think?
Yeah. So we have a. Let me take a passage from the book that I really enjoyed that talks about this very topic. I will read it to you to later explain it. Okay? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, starting. And the families learned, although no one told them, that rights are monstrous and must be destroyed. The right to intrude upon privacy, the right to be noisy while the camp slept, the right of seduction or rape, the right of adultery and theft and murder. Those rights were crushed because the little worlds could not exist for even a night with such rights alive. So yeah,
That you can go. I have a comment, but you can start.
okay, thank you. And well, this passage also indirectly emphasizes on a fascinating thing about communities, and it's that if we something we've seen repeat in history before is the creation of rules. And it's interesting to see that even right now, if we have to start from scratch and we would have to grow a community once again, we would again start establishing laws. In a certain way, this passage puts the reader into uh, a setting that strikes an uncanny resemblance to a post-apocalyptic world that is slowly rebuilding itself. So basically, it gives this vibe of people who lost their home and they are slowly but surely rebuilding it back somewhere else. Of course, it's not gonna be the same, but it is happening.
That actually makes a lot of sense. So if you think about it, it's like they their worlds got destroyed, right? So they're rebuilding something. Makes sense for them to have lost. And I think it's really interesting that it says that these little worlds could not exist with such rights alive. Makes a lot of sense because it's very small communities and they only exist for a bit. So if you allow something bad to happen, that person's gonna keep doing bad things. And even if one person does something, what's the size of the camp? It's like 100 people or so. 1% of a community is a huge amount. So if you like, you don't want that to spread, and it has gonna have a big effect. So if someone does something bad, it's gonna be catastrophic for a community that was formed on a day because it's gonna decrease security. People are gonna be scared of each other. And at the end of the day, they're strangers. If they lose this connection, the world falls apart, and they're just strangers sleeping near each other, which is pretty scary. So that makes sense. They gotta keep that like profile of building a world, right? So the laws make sense. I think I remember that like if you broke the laws, so this was to get people from stopping, there were punishments, and the worst of them was ostracism. So it's very bad because ostracism basically the person got expelled from the group, and other people, then the people from that group would tell others like, hey, don't take this person in, don't take this person in. So it's horrible because like you're gonna be completely alone and your world was crushed, and you might even face horrible circumstances because it's a very hard trip, right?
Yeah, and something very interesting about uh, how the actual human being works is that we are we are of course also animals, and we are very dependent on communities. So even the most shy of people, the most introverts of us, like myself, when we go through a very intense process of loneliness, which has happened to me before, even we start desiring to be alongside other people and be in these like big communities of people. So like I could imagine if you are a migrant and you are traveling through the world with like absolutely no signs of life at all, and then you see this huge crowd of people, you would get this euphoric uh, or like comforting feel to stay with them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I agree with that. Let's look a bit at the reality of people in the camps, right? So we just saw that they were society, right? But why did this society exist? So, why did this get formed? So before joining the camps, right? Before when they were traveling, people were very lonely. They were in a very bad place because they just lost their home. They lost their original world. So they were lonely, perplexed, and sad, worried, and defeated because they have to switch homes. It's pretty bad, right? And as people got used to bunching up, they felt stronger, right? So they're gonna get less timid. They're gonna become better at building world as well. So you're gonna see I showed the image of the very cool camp. It didn't start out like that. It started out very shabby, but people got better at building the camps, at carrying furniture with them, and as they started feeling safer with the shelters and the rules being formed, they also the camps themselves, the worlds improved, right? So that's kind of why people much get. Oh, guys, that was great. I would love to see if you guys could maybe connect this to some contemporary issue or maybe some story that you guys have read. That'd be really cool. Wow, thank you. That's very specific and really breaks my immersion with this video that we're making. Thank you.
So yeah, there is actually this fictional story that is very popular in Brazil called Terras Sonambulas, and it has a very interesting connection with this with the Grapes of Wrath. Terras Sonambulas takes place after a series of conflicts in Mozambique, which ultimately end up with a sort of again post-apocalyptic vibe on the setting, right? And of course, in the story, we find ourselves reading about this kid who lost her mom and was saved by a former soldier. And now these people are just wandering about in a completely isolated world that it's almost completely devoid of any humans, but there is still broken buildings there. And there is this like liminal feeling to everything as you read about these people making their journey into what we hope is their goal, which is, the kid finding her mother. And we can relate this with the Grapes of Wrath because in the story, the migrants are also, they also have a goal, right? And they are also exploring through a world that is completely barren and, wasteland kind of. And well, they have this goal of reaching the West and actually establishing a good life. And that's kind of like the premise that the Hassanamblas goes for as well.
I think
And
that
then,
makes a lot of. Oh, sorry.
but yeah, continue.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's very cool to see the difference as well, because in Taos Novelas, what's very different is the sense of community isn't created because there's only one person with a goal, and it's the kid finding his mom, right?
Mhm.
So and the guy finding helping the kid, but it's just two people. And the community isn't formed, even though sometimes they find people, they don't form a community because they don't share goals. The other people aren't looking for company or something like that. So it's very interesting.
But there's another thing with that. We can see an actual friendship, sort of friendship forming uh, between this former soldier and the kid. This
Oh
guy,
yeah, that's true.
this guy just starts off as a complete like as a person who really believes in like not loving because that makes you vulnerable, and eventually the kid starts winning his heart. So even though there's no creation of communities, this guy starts creating a very good relationship with this kid, which can kind of relate with this creation of communities where like they start relating with each other because of their current situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. That actually fits very well. So you can see the difference between like, yeah, they have the same goals, so they go together, and other people don't, so they don't. And that's really cool. Do you have another connection?
And now let's say a more contemporary issue, and well, it's the AI takeover, you know?
Hmm.
And what I'm talking about specifically here is the fact that AI currently is starting to get skilled enough to actually do things that regular humans would do. And this is causing a massive, or at least for now, rather tame beginning to like the extinction of some jobs. And these people who lose their jobs are gonna have to uh, straight up migrate to new jobs. And some of them who have learned very very specific skills for that specific job, like let's say writing, um, are gonna have to learn new skills, just like the migrants in the Grapes of Wrath, right? The migrants
Yeah, they
had to
learn
learn
to build the camps,
skills,
right?
exactly, and they're gonna have to learn new skills, and the ones who don't are gonna start, having to live in the streets, which is something horrible to think about.
Yeah. That's actually that actually makes sense a lot because I think what I really like about story is the use of the word worlds to describe the camps because it's very novel, right? And I think what it means is that it uses world in the sense of like this is all that exists for the people, right? So the world of the migrants before in the story was the farm. So they had their farm, and because of the Dust Bowl event, they lost their farm, they lost their world. And every day, new worlds were being formed. They met people who meant everything to them for the time being. Their life was the road, and they stopped and actually rested in these new worlds that they had. So it was the moment of stability, even though it wasn't temporary. It was temporary. I mean, it was this moment of stability. So I think that makes sense a lot because if you think of the AI, people's jobs could kind of be described as their world. And with AI, they're gonna lose these jobs and create new worlds. So people are definitely gonna see a similar goal. It's already happening. People who are getting their jobs replaced are bunching together and they don't really like AI. It's more in a form of protest, but people are seeing themselves in each other, seeing their struggles, sharing struggles. So that's very similar to Grace of Wrath in that sense of the worlds being destroyed and finding new ones. Okay, so now Alfred, I think we can do. Alfred, where are you?
Hey, sorry. A cow just escaped. We were taking care of the situation. The My fellow workers are already. I think they have it under control. So yeah,
Great.
just a minor inconvenience. Very sorry about that.
No, don't worry. I wanted you to do fun passage picking. So you had a really cool one last time, so I wanted to hear another one from you.
Oh yeah, I actually have a very good one as well. I'm gonna start reading it again to for you to have a reference, and then I'm gonna explain. So,
Sure.
starting, the families moved westward, and the technique of building the worlds improved so that the people could be safe in their worlds. And the form was so fixed that a family acting in the rules knew it was safe in the rule. So, what we can get from this passage is that, first of all, it actually repeats the word safe. And this is not a mistake from the author. This is actually that he wants something that he wants us to interpret. And in my case, I feel like the word safe, it's at first when it says it with the actual worlds that were created, it says that people generally became more safe after they created these communities. But after the creation of new rules, they felt safe. So the actual creation of worlds um, already made them safe, but the creation of rules made them feel safe.
That makes sense. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, I think Albert, I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick. This is getting kind of long, so I'm gonna go there. Be right back.
Okay.
Oh, hello
Oh my
everyone.
God, it's John Steinbeck.
Hello. Hi. Um, Alfred. Yes, that's your name. Hello. I'm here now. The podcast invited me for you guys to ask questions about my book. So go ahead, ask.
Oh, oh yeah, sure. About your book, right? Your book.
Yes.
What's your favorite color?
It's purple because of grapes, like my book, Grapes of Wrath, you know?
Oh, right. Right. Um, Sorry, I'm very nervous.
It's
Um,
fine. Just ask about my book.
what year were you born in?
Oh, according to ChatGPT, February 27th, 1902 in Salinas, California. But don't you want to ask something about my book?
Oh yeah, sorry. So when did you publish this great book?
Great book. I published it in 1939. It received a Pulitzer in 1940. It's actually been 1 year since I received that. That's so cool.
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. And when did you die?
I I die? Ah!
Ah, ah, oh, oh,
Hey, Alfred, I'm back. Did I miss anything? I guess I
hello.
didn't. I guess I didn't. So let's just finish the podcast. Um,
Yeah, sure.
so okay, I'm just gonna do kind of a self-reflection. So in my experience reading this book, I it's pretty sad to see the decadent conditions of the migrants after literally losing their worlds, which were their farms. They're like literally scavenging to survive in the world. They're like getting trash sometimes. And but each day, as a positive, they would gain new worlds. So even though they lost, they would gain them. And while it seems like they encounter joy, in my opinion, it seems kind of bittersweet to gain a new world every day. They were literally only hanging on due to their goals, which was their only stability, permanent stability. They were like, "Oh, I gotta catch the West. Let's keep going and going and going." I really like the quote, "The dusk came, but before the dark was down, the new family was off the camp," because it really just shows how integrated the family became with the camp. And I don't know, it's interesting to see because it's kind of sad that they got so close to someone, but then lost them again because their ultimate goal isn't to make friends with people who are passing through the same thing. It's to reach the West. But then they lose this like community that they created in 1 day. And it's just kind of sad. It's a really sad situation. So that's the vibe that I got reading the book. It has a positive vibe. It shows, oh, they're really good people. They were joining together, society farming, but every day, and it's interesting. But I just feel bad for the people. It's very interesting to see though how their similar circumstances really joined them and made them form a community so fast.
Oh, sorry, I phased out a little bit because I'm pretty sure I just saw John Steinbeck die.
What?
What? Anyways, I'm gonna talk about my reflection reading this book. Um,
Please do, please do. Ooh, that's so
so,
weird.
through the process of reading the book, I could discern a constant feeling of progress being prominent. As for the longer I read, as for the longer I read, the more the families of migrants would grow and evolve. And you would see this constant feeling of progression, right? Of like these people are actually making progress, but it's horrible to think about the fact that there is that these people have lost most of the progress that they have made before. So yeah, they are starting the entire lives from scratch, but in a certain way, there is still this sense of accomplishment every
hmm
time you see an advancement. And yeah, in short, I felt that the book had a contrast between progress and the loss of such thing.
That's very interesting. That's a different perspective, I think. Like I really find that interesting how you see like the progress as not something good when I saw it as like something good only to be lost, I think. I think that's interesting. But yeah, guys, I think that concludes it. Thank you very much for your participation. That was amazing. Thank you.